Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell, S.C. D. Lesson number 25. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. We still search for simplicity. We live in a bewildering world which confuses us only because we do not know it. A primate would be similarly confused about a watch. To him its wheels would have no meaning because both the mechanics and purpose of the watch would be incomprehensible to him. Yet the watch is very simple to you, its mechanics and purpose are perfectly familiar to you, you regard it as a very simple thing to understand. You are confused about creation because you do not know it. Likewise, you are confused about the Creator because you do not know Him. Also you are confused about the mechanics and purposefulness of matter and motion because you do not know them. You may think you need not be interested in knowing about matter and motion because it seems difficult, but you must know their cause, and that is very simple. Without this knowledge you are like a ship without a navigator. You must know creation, for your body which you are building, is one unit of it. You must know how to control it. You also 1417 Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 418 must know it for what it is instead of what you think it is. When you become familiar with it as being but certain states of motion, you must know that those states of motion are wave records of your desires, just as a picture is the record of the painter's desire. A manufacturer produces a better product in the measure of his knowledge of his product. Your body is as much your product as the products of your factory. Millions of years of your desire produced it. In 1 minute the desire of your will can alter its entire structural balance in either direction toward life or death without the slightest physical action upon your part. The medical profession can make enormous strides in its great service to man by starting upon a basis of greater knowledge of cause of the countless effects it encounters. In its search for cause of effects in matter, its beginning should be in a greater knowledge of motion which matter is, and the relation of mind to motion which polarizes or delarizes body structures of unbalances its polarity to form destructive tissues and destructive electrochemical reactions. It is for this reason that we must talk in simple language while taking matter apart to see how and why it ticks, as we have to take the watch apart for the same reason. The need for simple language is great because the things which shall be told to you about motion needs the replacing of old concepts with new ones. These new concepts must become new foundations for comprehension of things not known or even dreamed of in nature. All mankind is still in as primate a stage concerning the cause and purposefulness of all effects of motion as the early man. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 419 To whom you are trying to explain the watch. When you have finished explaining one thing to him in the simplest words you could find, you would have to explain one thing after another about the wheels, the gears, the central shaft and its extensions before he even faintly comprehended its mechanism. Even then he would know nothing of its motivating force nor the principle of time itself. No matter how simple your words are, you would find it very difficult to make that thing which is so simple to you seem simple to him. You would find yourself using the simplest kind of words as though you were talking to a child. That is what I have been doing for the first 24 lessons, just attempting to lay a simple foundation for the motivating spirit in the still center of the universal shaft from which all power is extended for its cycles of divided and 2-1-1-1-1 equals 1,4A1 power, and to which all wheels are geared through each other to manifest the tick-tick-tick of the heartbeats of the universe, which spells out the time sequences of every action-reaction of creation. And so it is that I must find simple words and simple examples to explain fully to you the tick-tick of the divided universe of time and space, which has one tick on each side of every equator to balance each other's unbalanced condition, and repeat it upon the other side of the equator as the other tick of the cosmic pendulum. You simultaneously live in two worlds, and you must know both of them thoroughly and their relation to each other. The universal pump would not continue to unfold disappearing two-world universe if it were not for the universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 420. Electric interchange of motion from one side of an equator to the other, as long as the energy of desire divides the undivided still light into pairs of moving lights. Suppose, instead of my having used the words appearing disappearing universe in the above paragraph, one used the words living dying universe, or growing decaying universe, or generating degenerating universe, or gravitating radiating positive negative male female hot cold, or centripetal centrifugal universe. No matter which pair of words I use, they would all have the same meaning. They are all of them the compression-expansion strokes of the piston, which pumps opposite pressures from each other to make bodies seem to appear out of nothing and then disappear into that seeming nothing. Which is the reality of all seeming. It is not helpful to talk about reality and unreality abstractly. These phrases, and many like them, such as the divided and the undivided, the physical and the spiritual, or mortal mind and divine mind, are commonly used, but if most people were pinned down with the necessity of explaining them to someone who wanted to know, they would find themselves in a quandary. But you who are acquiring this new knowledge are able to explain all of such phrases. Knowing what they mean gives you a supremacy of power over all things, of your own body as well as the universal body, of cultural things as well as physical, for out of the rhythms of the divided universe come the expression of all of the arts, and from the undivided light comes the soul of idea, which is universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 421. Extended to cultural and intellectual expression in the arts. Likewise, your knowledge of the secrets which lie hidden within the wave gives you mastery of universal mechanics, mathematics and energy expression. Conversations are too much filled with abstractions and affirmations without comprehension of their meaning. Refer back to figures 8 and 9 on page 149 to exemplify my meaning. Now pause for a while and recall what so many have called the great mystery of how solid and liquid bodies view from space and are swallowed. 22 again by it, which means how the divided universe emerges from the undivided light of mind. Meditate upon this thought for a while. I am not only trying to make you look upon nature more simply, I am trying to make you look upon life and death more simply as you look upon sound and silence. I am trying to make you know that Y0 you cannot die degrees when you breathe, and you are manufacturing your body because you desire to live. When Y212 are breathing out, you are destroying your body because you desire to die. You desire to die as much as you desire to live. Do not be too hasty in denying this. Think about it for a while. Let us think about it together and see if true thinking of nature is not better than false thinking. Action and life can for stress and death. Let us think about life and death again, but let us not use those two words which have such a hopeful, dreadful connotation. Let us absolutely forget that pair of words by substituting instead the words motion and rest. And when you think of motion, universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 422. Mvmo register demo equals B equals 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 equals. Think of it as being divided and of rest as being undivided and indivisible. Recall what I said about desire itself being divided into two opposite expressions of energy: the desire to concentrate and the desire to decentrate degrees. When you desire to manifest an idea at rest in your mind, you concentrate your thinking by setting it in motion, XXX, continuing to multiply that motion until you focus it into an image body of that invisible idea. In other words, you wind up something which was invisible until it becomes visible degrees. You generate a condition called gravity. Then what do? You decentrate your thinking by setting your brakes against that multiplying motion until it ceases in rest. Motion then decelerates until it comes to rest in the idea from which it started. In other words, you unwind that which you have made visible until it becomes invisible. You radiate gravity into space zero. Again I repeat the principle that all motion starts from a point of rest, seeks a point of rest, and returns to the equilibrium of rest from which it sprang. Motion starts centripetally to wind 221_ into formed bodies and ends centrifugally to unwind them into 0 degrees. Perhaps we may now formulate a definition of creation based upon the above, as follows: creation is an idea at rest in God's knowing mind, manifested by two-way motion in God's thinking mind. Deep thought upon this idea should reveal to you that life is but desire for motion and death is desire for rest from motion. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 423. Likewise, both life and death are but bodies of thoughts formed in the image of thoughts which come. And 8.2 in thinking mind forever degrees, the greater the vitality which generates power to multiply motion, the greater is your ability to manifest life. But the moment you divide that power, by depolarization, or fatigue, or anything whatsoever which reduces the power of your body cells to pump vigorously, that moment you express death degrees. Now consider your desire in the morning to get into action, and to express that power vitally all day degrees. Do you not equally desire to cease from action at night, to relax, then still later to cease even the action of thinking by fully resting in sleep? If you will weigh them both in your thoughts, you will find that the desire for rest is equal to the desire for motion degrees. Rest is the direction of death from which life is reborn. For every condition in nature borns its opposite condition. Your desire to breathe in is equaled by your desire to breathe out. But when you breathe in, you compress to express life by acceleration of motion, and when you breathe out, you expand to express death by deceleration of motion degrees. When you breathe in, you CHH your body degrees. When you breathe out, you destroy your body degrees. Your body appears from the invisibility of rest and disappears from the visibility of motion degrees. You are perpetually living and dying, growing and decaying, generating and radiating. And resting degrees your body grows. From multiplication of motion degrees it decays. From division of motion degrees it generates and radiates for the same reason that it lives and dies, and the desire for each is equal degrees. Neither can be without the universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 424. Other. Each is born from the other simultaneously, then borns the other sequentially. The principle of the Divine Trinity underlies all that is herein stated, and their expression is possible only through two-way interchange of motion between each pair of opposites through each other. Conclusion: when any of our loved ones die, we rightly feel a great sense of grief and loneliness degrees. All the knowledge in the world will not assuage that expression of emotion degrees that is as it should be. We are all of us actors in the divine drama of creation, and if its actors did not express emotions which are appropriate to the lines of the play, they would be useless and purposeless actors. Degrees: grief, suffering, loneliness and kindred emotions are as purposeful in the divine drama of life as joyfulness, happiness and like emotions are purposeful. And being purposeful, they are good degrees. Sunshine in nature would be a calamity without shadow, and an artist's picture would be purposeless and valueless without both sunshine and shadow in their balanced relations. No matter how great your knowledge of the unreality of death may become, and no matter how strongly you may live in the spiritual world, you must not forget that you have a physical body which manifests spiritual idea, and that you live in both the divided and the undivided universes of cause and effect. Degrees: to have so much knowledge of the undivided universe that at universal law, natural science and philosophy, page 425, leaves you cold to the emotions of the divided universe is to hold yourself aloof from the play, and render you purposeless. I have often said that the greatest achievement of life is to learn how to take all things alike, but I do not mean by that one should become an intellectual stoic. God's body expresses all of the emotions and passions which result from a division of electric pressures into two opposite conditions. All of them manifest God's thinking, and they always balance. Storms subside and the calm after the storm demonstrates that both are equally good degrees. The calm is lovelier after the storm, just as the water is sweeter after the long drought. What I do mean about learning to take all things alike is to be strong in the knowledge that all things are good equals, and every effect is divided into its opposite effect, and each of the pair is equal to the other, each equally good. Your capacity for joy and happiness may be measured your capacity for G_R'191 and suffering. All of the knowledge in the world should not dehumanize you. Your knowledge will, however, balance all opposite emotions and thus enrich you for having experienced them, while ignorance will breed fears, worries, superstitions and other unnatural emotions which act as a terrific burden to your progress. Knowledge of universal law will give you courage to transform the greatest defeat which ever threatened you into your greatest achievement. It will give you a philosophy by means of which you may meet the grief of death, enriched by the knowledge that every experience universal law, natural science and philosophy, page 426, is good, in that every experience strengthens you to meet all experiences alike. You will know that the emergence of Lin, from the universal equilibrium, is not greater, nor better, than its return journey to the same equilibrium. For re-emergentio you will know that the equator which borns life has but transformed death into another manifestation of life which is as endless in its eternal repetition as the undivided universe is eternal in its three changelessness. And so it is that I must still unfold to you in simple words and diagrams the undivided balance of the changeless one and the divided balance of the changing pairs of opposites which manifest. Then you shall know that the undivided cannot divided, but can seem to be, and you shall know the perspective of time and of the cosmos which makes all things seem to be what they simulate but are not that which they simulate, and shall know that what emerges from one side of its equator is equal but opposite to that which is on the other side, and that each will disappear in seeming death to reborn each other as seeming life. Degrees: the anodes of the universe are likewise cathodes, and the cathodes are likewise anodes, as surely as you, who breathe out, breathe in again to again breathe out, and as you who live, are dying as you live, and must forever die to forever live. We shall, therefore, build thought bodies and give them form in light waves of octave tones and call them solids of matter. Universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 427, which constitute that inexplicable objective universe of so many things which mystify us and leave us so grossly ignorant that we write down tragedies and calamities in our lives which should be glorious with golden fruits of ecstatic knowing wand. We write upon life's pages defeats and illnesses and breakdowns where naught but our ascension should be written. Degrees all things on earths and heavens of this divided universe of God's recorded thoughts are good, because God's thoughts are good. You may be perfectly willing to believe this statement as abstract truth, but belief in it without knowing will not make you strong. Degrees you must K0W, for knowledge alone will make you strong. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell, S.C. D. Lesson number 26. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. Sound, Silence and Wave Vibrations. We will again consider the making of bodies which appear and disappear to live and die from another point of view. Let me recall, as heretofore stated, that all that God does is to make bodies to manifest His all-knowing. Also I stated that that is all you likewise do. Let me again emphasize the fact that all bodies are but states of motion, living, dying states of motion, generating, degenerating states of motion which arise from rest and have to keep moving very fast to simulate the idea of life. As long as they move fast enough they have living bodies, but as they slow down, they lose their bodies. To increase their speed they must have energy enough to polarize. They always lose it, however, and depolarize. It is Y0U who give them that energy, and it is Y0U who take it away. Instead of using the word states of motion we will substitute the word vibrations, and we will amplify that word by saying wave vibrations. Let us again amplify this by saying thought wave vibrations. 429. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 430. All bodies are transient thought wave vibrations which come in G2 to give body forms to thought vibrations. Vibrations of motion extend from stillness. Degrees the heartbeat of creation is a two-way piston stroke of vibratory motion which extends from the still light of mind. Mind Sisalig is real. Degrees moving bodies simulate reality. We will exemplify this idea of vibratory motion by constructing a body of sound waves which extend from the silent idea of sound, as waves of water extend from its calm. Figure 52 represents the idea of a tone of music in a silent harp string. The desire to give a body to that idea is manifested by setting the string in vibratory motion. To do that you divide the silence of the harp string just as you divide the calm surface of water when you throw a stone into it, which extends the surface into waves. Figure 53 represents the harp string vibrating so rapidly that you hear one continuous sound so long as the waves continue to vibrate. Degrees then the sound ceases living. It dies. What really has happened is that a body of sound was given to an idea of music for a cycle of time, then the vibrations ceased. The sound then disappeared into the silence of rest from which it sprang into motion to manifest the idea. Degrees the sound appeared and it disappeared and will reappear, but the silent idea is eternal. It will again appear when desire causes it to reappear. The idea of music does not either live or die, that is changeless and eternal. It is the sound, which manifests the universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy page 431. Music, which lives and dies, lust as it is only your body, which manifests you, which lives and dies, then again lives and dies forever and forever. Again we repeat that life and death are but opposite states of motion: centripetal motion which contracts toward gravity, and centrifugal motion which expands toward space. Life is a fast winding up of light waves into bodies of visible matter. Death is a balanced unwinding of ill waves into invisible matter. I wish you would all meditate long upon this idea. Your all-knowing inner voice will tell you many things if you will do this, the divided and the undivided, before continuing to construct the sound body for a musical tone. I wish to give you a thought for you to transform into knowing by prolonged meditation. Consider the familiar motion picture. You know that every expression of life on that screen is motion only. All forms of bodies, and all sounds and actions of bodies, are but the seeming motion of light waves which have been projected from a still point of rest to simulate motion. You know also that what seems like motion is due to a very rapid succession of still pictures thrown upon the screen one at a time, so rapidly that the eye does not detect any single picture before the next one, of a slightly changed pattern, is projected. Neither do you detect the blank gap which divides each picture where nothing is. If the projection machine were slowed down very materially, your sense of sight would detect each universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 432. Separate picture and the gap between. Likewise, your sense of hearing would detect an interval of silence between each sound, just as you can detect an interval of silence between the explosions of a Gatling gun. The continuity of a steam whistle is due to the intense rapidity of its sequential explosions. If these explosions could be slowed down very materially, you would hear them as separate events taking place sequentially on opposite sides of their equator. What I now wish you to do, in order to increase your comprehension of the continual interworkings between the divided universe and the undivided universe, also in order for your greater comprehension of the impossibility of dividing the undivided, also for clarifying your comprehension of the illusion which makes it seem possible to divide the undivided, is to imagine the silent harp string as an interval of silence between two musical sounds, and relate that effect to the black gap between sequences of motion pictures, and also relate it to the silent intervals between explosions of a Gatling gun. Take note that in the following drawings there is no sound at all on that equator which is the motionless harp string. That equator is an area of silence, silence unbroken, undivided. Sound takes place only upon each side of its equator of silence, for there is motion on each side and no motion at all on the dividing equator. If you fully comprehend what I have just told you, you will fully comprehend the relation of the divided universe of motion. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 433. Macm.ho. Mamo.2 plus 01 nami.pkmgospot.imu.g4 mamovo.m.o. Which forever repeats its sequences of motion to create illusion, to the undivided universe of stillness from which those sequences of motion are projected degrees. In other words, you will be intellectually able to be constantly aware of the two worlds in which you live, the undivided and the divided, instead of just the one divided world of the senses which has dominated man's actions for ages. The supremacy of man is dependent upon the measure of his ability to live knowingly in the undivided mind universe degrees. The master makes use of the divided universe of sensed matter as he wills, or dismisses it from his consciousness when he wills. Until you become master of matter, it will master you degrees. The greatest aim of your life should be freedom from matter and to be its master degrees. That is why I am stressing the mechanics of the divided universe of sensed matter which has made man its slave for ages, in order that knowing man can transcend matter and become its master instead of its slave. For this reason you must know the mechanics of it until it is automatic in you. Degrees. The small effort of study you give to knowing this principle in your heart is more than priceless to you. That is exactly what I mean by the transformation which will lift the more spiritually advanced of the human race out of the ages of material man into the age of cosmic man. And that also is the reason why you should know the invisible universe of God's still light even more abundantly than you can sense the two lights of opposed pressures which constitute the sensed electric universe of divided motion. Degrees. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 434. Likewise, that is the reason why I am taking this simple example of a harp string to demonstrate how a living dying body emerges from the seeming nothingness of space to manifest life, and disappears into it to manifest death. The sound which emerges from the silent harp string is as much a physical body as your body. So it is a series of light waves, just as your body is a series of light waves. Degrees. The sound issuing from one plucking of a harp string may have hundreds of separate lives, all reincarnations of each other, in a few seconds of time. Degrees. The fact that your present body has a time cycle of 80 or more years, instead of 1,000th of a second, makes you feel that your body is very different from a body like the sound of a harp string, and that fact makes you lose all sense of cosmic perspective. Degrees. You are willing to admit, as a scientific fact, that a body of sound lives, dies and lives again 1,000 times in 1 second, but you have much confusion in comprehending the inevitability of your own repetition of body. Degrees. You will more fully see prevent the reincarnation as inevitable law when you fully comprehend that every idea of mind, without exception, is always manifested 12 years a countless series of bodies which continually change their patterns to conform to the changing images of changing thoughts. Degrees. If eternal repetition, or reincarnation, if you wish to call it that, is the one most inviolate law of all creating things, why should you think that it does not apply to you? As one step in the unfolding of your greater comprehension of timelessness in the undivided universe which I am trying to. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 435. All bodies are but transient light waves, they are but thought forms set in motion. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 436. Make your foundation for stronger living. I beg that you will study the diagrams which fully illustrate the creation of 100 reincarnated bodies of one idea in 1 second or even 1 fraction of a second. You think of these hundreds of bodies as vibration 5, yet you would not think of your present life as but just 1 unit of a vibration of millions of years in duration instead of 1 fraction of a second. I would like to have you begin to think of your body that way, and as the timed manifestation of an idea which is eternal and timeless. I would like to have you elevate your consciousness to the level of full awareness of yourself as the universal presence, the universal being, rather than think of yourself as a body which has a name and address and personality. As awareness of being in you unfolds, the sense of individuality will disappear just as 1 tone of a harp string loses its separateness in the wholeness of the master symphony. Degrees. That is the way cosmic man of tomorrow will think of himself. That is the way I want you to think of yourself. When you think of yourself as 1 individual unit of creation, you are but that 1 unit struggling for survival and for self-interest among the countless other individual units. When you think that way you are weak, for your desires are self-centered and the world will not enrich you with its 92 years nor its bounty, for you are not enriching it. When your desires are for the whole and when you know that you are the whole, then only are you strong. A new race of men are coming into being, a race of men who will be strong through having learned how to lose their bodies to find their soul in the universal soul. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell, S.C. D. Lesson number 27. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. Preface. We have now reached the stage where the new idea given in Lesson 11 can be enlarged upon to vastly aid you in removing all limitations from your life by making you know how you can build it to any heights of power you desire without being handicapped by the lack of knowledge from which doubts, fears, pessimism and other negative effects retard your growth. Please restudy lesson number 11 from page 180 and build this lesson upon it. All science textbooks contain a universally accepted law which is printed on page 183 of lesson 11, which is as follows: 8 Action and reaction are equal and opposite. On the same page that idea is amplified by explaining that action and reaction are simultaneous in their expression. It states that they are then repeated sequentially. On page 180 there is a quotation from the Divine Iliad, which is God's assurance that whatever you desire will not only be granted to you but is already yours, and always has been, but you have not yet known it. That is the trouble with us. We do not know our power. 1137 Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 438. Proof of this lies in the fact that we have used not more than 2% of our power at this early stage of man's unfolding. Bearing in mind the statements on pages 181–3, and assuming that you fully comprehend them, we shall now modify the above law by clothing it in other words as follows. Every action is ITSOWN reaction. This means that when you perform any action you have already created its equal and opposite reaction. Actions are necessary to give physical bodies to mind desires. The desire must precede the action, but the thought body of a mind desire can never have a physical body without being followed by physical action. If your action is in balance with your desire, the reaction will also be. Likewise, if your desire is of majestic measure, and your action is in the measure of your desire, you will produce a material body of majestic measure. You cannot help doing so, for the reaction of your action is as certain to be the image of your majestic desire as that day follows night. If you have allowed this idea to sink into your soul until you know it, not just believe it, you will now be ready to comprehend another modification of this wonderful promise of our Father Mother, now following. Every desire of mind is already fulfilled. When you actually know this, you are equipped for any achievement whatsoever which is within universal law. Knowing this within your soul strips you of any limitations whatsoever. When you desire to accomplish anything, you will start doing it at once with knowledge that you can complete it, for will learn how to do it in the doing of it. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 439. The lesson that you should learn from this, coupled with lesson 11, is that your desires and your actions should be positive. They must express the life principle. The slightest negative note in your desire lessens it, negates it. If your knowledge is strong, your desire can be without measure. If your desire is to remove mountains, the mountains will be moved. But the slightest doubt, or fear, or the picturing of insurmountable hurdles, or pessimism arising from past failures, or hesitating because of lack of money, or any other species of doubt whatsoever, means that the negation of your desire lessens the measure of your positive desire, which is based upon knowing. As God's law is absolute, you cannot possibly evade distorting the pattern of your desire by doubting the certainty of its fulfillment. When you have arrived at this stage of your knowing, you will have no desire which is for self alone. That would be impossible. When you have become fully aware of your cosmic self, your very nature will be cosmic. Your desires will be for the whole, like unto our father-mother's desires, and as our Creator's creations are like unto his balanced desires, for the whole and never for a part, so will your creations be balanced like unto his. The more you fully comprehend the infinitely multiplied power you are bestowing upon yourself by losing your personal ego in your newly found universality, the more you can discard past ages of body sensing and glory in the ecstasy of your knowing. The great mystics of all time have tried to give you this secret of their power in such words as "He that findeth his life universal law, natural science and philosophy," page 44, shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for this sake shall find it. But their meanings have not been understood. Not until the coming of cosmic man could these teachings of cosmic conscious messengers be even faintly understood. These things I know, and I know also that you cannot rise to the great heights of your own omnipotence until you know the true relationship which exists between the light which mind is and the two lights which bodies are. Bear with me, therefore, for your own sake, when I tell you in great detail about such seemingly unimportant things as the vibration of a harp string. As every effect of motion in the universe has the same basic foundation in the Divine Trinity as every other effect, it is as important that you understand the principle which lies behind the simple vibration of a harp string, which lives and dies many hundred times in 1 second, as that you know about the same principle in the nebula which has but life in hundreds of billions of years. We compare a sound vibration with life in 1 WLTH to point out the sameness of principle which lies back of every effect of motion, and of the law which governs the making of material bodies from conceived thought bodies, and of the principle of desire which is already fulfilled at the moment of concentration upon desire, and the sequential fulfillment by the action of giving your desire a material body. We will continue to amplify the above by still continuing to use the example of the desire to give a material body to the musical tone of a silent harp string. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 441. Let us, therefore, build the body of the idea of a musical tone, step by step. And as we build it, let us fix within our consciousness the fact that we build all other bodies in exactly the same manner. That manner is God's way of doing it, and there is no other. Lay no variation of the process whatsoever, whether it be a solar system built by God, or a top which a boy builds for spinning, or an industry built by man. 1. First comes desire of mind. Desire is timeless. Desire of mind to create comes like a flash of inspired light from knowing mind. Desire to create always means a desire to give out from the centering soul. Desire to create is spiritual, and a spiritual creation always gives out from a centering point of omniscient, omnipotent light. Do not confuse the spiritual desire to create bodies with the physical desire to take something to continue the growth of a creating body. Desires of the senses for the survival of sensed bodies is the process of lawfully receiving that which is given, or of unlawfully T11 LPG it for self alone. 2. Desire of mind to conceive an idea of mind is immediately fulfilled, for every separate idea is a part of God's one whole idea. Therefore wisely know that your desire is already fulfilled as a mental conception, because the whole idea, of which your idea is a part, is already existent in the undivided universe of mind. 30 You now divide the idea by setting your concept in motion. To set it in motion is to think it. To think it is to separate what you want from the whole. You do not desire the whole, you want only a part of the whole. All you want, and have asked for, universal law, natural science and philosophy page 442 is to produce a musical note from the stillness of the whole universe by building a body of sound for senses to hear with outer ears and souls to hear with inner ears. 4. The moment you extend what you know to your electric servant which thinks what you know into thought forms, you begin the work of building a body for your desire. Remember always that God works with you and not for you. You are a unit of His creation, your soul is God's soul, your hands are God's hands. To the extent of your awareness of this fact, you are either manifesting God law being universal man and universal soul, or just manifesting your own sensed body. Whichever you are shows in your work. The thought-imaged bodies you create in your imaginings have in them your immortality or your mortality. Your concept now has a pattern, a thought pattern which is a thought body. It is like the formless seed of a rose from which the full-blown flower unfolds. You must now have your idea material body, and that can be done only through action. Again we say your desire has already been fulfilled, for that which you have desired already stands before you. God has created it for you by creating His own body. It is already existent, awaiting you. But you must reach forth and receive that which He has given you to fulfill your desire, for thy desire shall not walk thy way to thee unaided by thy strong arms, is stated in the message. Now comes the necessity for bodily action. You reach forth for the material to make your harp string. From now on the more you will keep before you a realization that each action is universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy page 443 ITSOWN Reaction. The easier becomes your task of building a body. For your musical tone or for the moving of a mountain, a light projected into a mirror is ray given from the mirror, and all matter is a mirror reflecting its units into each other. The recoil off a gun is the simultaneous reaction to its explosive action. A powerful discharge has a powerful recoil. Powerful thoughts of men likewise bring powerful reactions. Every reflection, or reaction is in reverse of its action, for it is by the simultaneous action-reactions of desire that the universal equilibrium is divided. Just as you could not polarize one end of a magnet without polarizing the other end simultaneously, you cannot perform any action which divides the undivided without creating both the action and its reaction simultaneously. To walk you must divide your balance. You lose it to find it, for again losing it, but that which you have lost is always awaiting you, for you created both action and reaction simultaneously. That which you have lost is already thine. All down the ages it has been thine without thy knowing, even though thou hast but just asked for it. You may walk to the ends of the earth with God. Without Him you can do nothing. He will not do it for you without you. That is what I mean by working knowingly with God. He has prepared the way for you. He has made the path for you up your own mountain, but you must work with Him for the fulfillment of your desire to reach your mountain top. The first step motivates you for the next step by reborning desire in you for the next step. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 4414. And so it is you put the material together, action by action given, and reaction by reaction given, until you have created a body for your harp and a string for the tone you desire. There it is. You can now see it and feel it, but all down the aeons it has always been there awaiting your desire followed law, your action to bring it into seeming big zero. Do you realize this fact? If you do, you can know that anything else which you wish to bring into seeming being 12 years pi in a transient body is within your limitless power. There is your harp with one string on it of the tone you desire. One string is one step toward completing all of the octaves of strings. There it is, completed but silent. 7. Now you are ready to fulfill the last step of your desire, that of building a body of sound from your harp. Again we repeat the fact that that desire is already fulfilled, for you know the sounds and rhythmic tones that are within the silence of those A strings. You not only know them but can imagine them as thought bodies which you can hear in your imaginings within your ears. In other words, you know that the sounds are there in the silence of the undivided, awaiting your action to born their bodies to life. Until you act to give your idea a material body, it will still be existent as undivided idea, but will not be expressed in the divided universe of moving bodies. You have no limitations until you set them. Much meditation on the above thoughts will lead you to great conclusions. The fact that God will immediately grant your desire seems unbelievable degrees, and it is unbelievable to those who universal law, natural science and philosophy page 445 misunderstand his way of working with you. If you interpret it to mean that whatever you desire will come to you full grown and without effort on your part, then you do not understand how it is that God works with you and not for you. If you do understand his manner of working with you step by step, then you must take that first step with him, in order to be given the power to take the next step. Degrees he whose desire has built a body for one harp string can become master harpist if his desires are of that measure, and then become leader of a symphony or master composer if his desire and his knowing are sufficiently intense. Degrees if you have any limitations whatsoever, you have yourself set them for yourself. The universe is infinitely extended and you are the universe. The universal balance wheel. When you look up into the heavens with a high-power telescope, you will see many nebulae which are like, or approximately like, the perfectly balanced spiral nebula which you see edgewise in Fig. Degrees 58, a three-quarter view of another perfectly balanced nebula of the same type is the one in Figure 57. If you could see either of these from a direct side view, it would resemble Figure 59. The amazing idea which I wish to convey to you is that the little swirling sound bodies which you see indicated on the amplitudes of every vibrating wave in Figs 53, 54, 55 and 56 are identical in every respect, except duration and volume, with these giant nebulae of the heavens. Degrees our Milky Way is one of these giant nebulae. Degrees our solar universal law, natural SC Mob in philosophy page 446. Every action in nature is repeated in reverse as its reaction. The T1D opposite pulsations constitute a cycle of the universal heart BM. The above form occurs at the reversal point of wave cycles. Universal law, natural science and philosophy page 447 Figure 61. Tidal waves do not vibrate in one plane as indicated in Figure 60. Light waves fill all space and are, therefore, three-dimensional. In Figure 61, a cylinder is inserted within the spiral wave shaft to help visualize the spiral, three-dimensional nature of waves. In the wave lies the secrets of creation, therefore, know the wave. Universal law, natural science and philosophy page 448 CM all CMONA. A equals M and CM. NCC after M A equals C. A equals G. M0 CMCM. NIMNC. MMMC. MC. MMNNA. CNCMGMC. MNCMMGN and MAAMC. McClin A. C. Our system is as a speck of dust in it. Hundreds of millions of stars constitute our Milky Way nebula, all at such vast distances from each other that the farther ones resemble milky clouds. Even from where you stand upon this little earth and look out into our nebula, you see such brilliant stars as Sirius, Vega, Capella, Arcturus and hundreds like them, all separate from each other because we are close to them, a few thousand millions of miles or so, and that is quite a neighborly closeness in a nebula. The distant ones are so far that light, traveling Q186 400 miles per second, takes millions of years to reach our planet. It seems incredible that the little spiral pinwheels, which balance and complete every sound vibration, is the same in principle and construction as those of solar and nebular wave vibrations, but that is the amazing fact of nature. Nature has but one system of (9 channels for dividing the undivided, and conditioning the unconditioned, and they are the same in microcosmic waves or macrocosmic ones. All matter is wound TLPT_IGHT concentrative thinking and unwound 1P decentrative thinking. The journey from rest to rest and back again is always a spiral one. Centripetal force pulls inward from within to create centers of gravity, and centrifugal force thrusts outward from within to dissipate and void the pull of gravity. The same forces which create the stars of the heavens create the cells of your body. For this reason what I shall tell you in the following lessons, for which I am now laying a foundation, is of vast import in knowing how to create a perfect body for universal law, natural science and philosophy, page 449. Yourself, a perfect business or perfect social relationship, as well as to create masterpieces of perfection in whatever you give out from yourself to the world. The more you comprehend the principle of balance in nature, the more you can control it in vitalizing your own body and the products of your mind. Conclusion: the reason we have stressed this one balanced form of the spiral nebula in the wave in the heavens and in the harp string is because that position in the wave is one of perfect polarity and perfect spherical form for all the planets of its atomic, solar or stellar systems. The equator for every sphere in every system is the same, and every pole of rotation in every sun and planet coincides with its magnetic poles. This swirling spiral form is the maximum of perfection in all creating systems of matter. It is the ideal sought for but seldom reached anywhere, either the heavens or man. The heavens are as full of unbalanced pairs of opposite systems and conditions as are found within human relationships and experiences. The whole principle of it is fascinating. The science of chemistry is based upon the combining of balanced and unbalanced conditions. The chemical elements are composed of SC unbalanced pairs which are separated from each other seeking sex union with each other, and one balanced pair which many have already found that union. You will find those which have already found sex union a universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 450. The amplitudes of their octave waves and each one of them will be almost as perfectly balanced as the nebulas shown in Figs. 58 and 59. Almost but not quite. There are 9 octaves of the elements and only one of these is a fully balanced pair. That one is the element known as carbon, and it is located on the amplitude of the whole 9-octave cycle. To know why a sun or solar system is dying is to know why you are dying. If I drew a diagram of this solar system, you would see how far out of balance it is as a whole. Planet, if you are as much out of balance as this fourth at XVX 410, you would feel devitalized, or ill. Its magnetic poles are 23 degrees from the polar axis of rotation. If you let the cells of your body depolarize to that extent, you would need a balance pole, or canes, to walk with. Likewise, if you allow your business to become so unbalanced, you would make very little profit, and probably face deficits. And so it is that we must still continue to build bodies as God builds them, and build them with God to manifest Him. To do this we must know in our hearts, we must know in our souls. You cannot produce enduring things by following memorized formulas. You must meditate upon them in your spare moments, in your walks, while waiting for a train, or alone in your chamber. The more you thus meditate, the more your mind will know, and, as a consequence, the more powerfully you will think. There is really very little to know, but it has such vast extensions that it is difficult to keep from being confused. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 451. Gradually, however, the principle of the Divine Trinity will become so much a part of you that one cloud of confusion after another will pass away until you can view the whole cosmos as one whole. When that day comes, all things shall be added unto you, and you shall know the glory of it. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy by Walter Russell. Say Degrees Do Lesson number 28. The Walter Russell Foundation, Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Copyrighted 1951 by Walter and Lau Russell. Questions concerning faith, belief and faith healing. So many questions have come to us from various sources which are so unlike the workings of natural law and God's ways of working that they might appropriately belong to the Middle Ages. People who are rational and wise about many things of life seem to lose all their rationality and reason when it comes to matters of interpreting God's ways. Many of these questions concern faith and belief, faith healing, intercessory prayer, and their belief in them is like unto belief in miracles which never happened nor could happen. Degrees. Many of these questioners sincerely believe that if many sincere and devout people pray long enough and with sufficient intensity, they can induce God to do something for them which He otherwise would not do, even to reversing His laws as special favors, in special recognition of their devotion. Many of them border so closely to superstition that it is useless to answer them, for those who ask are not ready for the truth. These prefer the so-called miraculous and find greater interest in the claim that people can walk on hot coals through 453. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 454. Faith and belief in the real law of nature, 12 years, means of which they can change their own depolarizing body law, a joyous polarizing thought, proving that the truth is always more wonderful than the most picturesque untruth, even though not so spectacular. It is very gratifying that our close students are practically free from this character of questions, for they are more ready for enlightenment, but even those who are closest to the light ask for scientific explanations so that they can better answer those who question them. We look to you who are ready for cosmic knowing to become the seed for spreading the light of cosmic awareness to all mankind. Therefore, I say to you that you must have comprehension and knowledge to manifest God, for faith and belief are blind. They are dwellers in the dark and will cause your feet to stumble and bind you to a slavery of dependence upon a basic nothingness where you need a rock of granite for your feet. You would not expect to write a story, compose a symphony, or solve a problem in mathematics upon faith and belief unsupported by knowledge. Yet countless prayers go light to God with the hope that faith and belief, without intelligent action based upon knowledge, will plead a fulfillment of desires. You do not have faith and belief that you can walk. You know that you can walk. You also know that you can do anything by acquiring the knowledge of how to do it through action. Yet many there are who have faith and belief that God will do it for them. God will not do it for them. He will do it only with them. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 455. The great misconception of prayer. Practically every prayer which carries with it a request also carries with it the inference that God is overlooking something in the management of his universe and needs a reminder that things are not running smoothly enough to suit the petition. Also they carry the inference that requests are asked as personal favors from relevant and devout believers, that such favors will be granted if enough devout and relevant people join the weight of their petitions together to be heard. God and his interest in their personal requests is sufficiently aroused. Such prayers carry an inference of intercession in someone's interest, as though intercession is necessary with God or would have any effect whatsoever upon him. To those I would say that God does his part always and needs no reminder. His part of creation is perfect. His law is perfect. His law always works. You do not have to ask God to make his law of gravitation work, neither will he set it aside if you ask him. If you fall over a cliff, the law of gravitation will cause your death whether you are saint or sinner, and no prayer will set that aside. God will tell you not to fall. He has told you that in your very seed, but if you disobey you will perish. God's whole universe is in perfect balance. He keeps it so you may depend upon it always. If you want good crops, God's law is there to give them to you if you work with his law. But if you ask God to do your part of the work as well as his, you will harvest nothing, no matter how great is your faith. Many humans would not ask God to cure a potato blight. The Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 456, would think it quite reasonable that the farmer does something to cure it himself. When, however, a blight strikes their own bodies, they vigorously condemn anyone who suggests that they do what the farmer does, who works knowingly with God, doing his part of the work together with God's part of it. What was the cause of the potato blight? Too much rain and damp? What was the cause of the human body blight? Tight lacings generations ago? Wrong diet? Unbalanced emotional disturbances? Frustrations? Infection from rusty nail? Distorted seed pattern of ancestors' unbalanced actions? No matter what the cause of any disintegrating or depolarizing effect, the remedy for it is to restore balance. The restoration of balance in any machine can be accomplished through action. The restoration of balance through any mental unbalanced condition is purely mental. A chain of thought from negative to positive will cure any mental ailment. A physically unbalanced condition, which is a reaction of the mental unbalance, will also become balanced. Such a mind healing has no relation whatsoever to faith and belief. It is purely cause and effect working in accordance with God's established law. Purely physical abnormalities, whether a broken bone, a cancer, a cut upon the head, a gunshot wound, paralysis from blood clots on brain, misshapen bodies or other deformities, can be cured only by physical action. One might just as well ask God. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 457. CM Maum CMO CM M MCM.0 C CM MCM CM CM AL CM 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 O CM 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 O CM CM CD CO equals A equals CR equals OA in all faith and belief to mend a broken spoke in an automobile wheel is to ask him to cure a deformed foot without intelligent action. Cause and effect creation is a play of cause and effect. The cause is undivided. Cause is always balanced. It is always 1 degree. Effect is divided. Instead of one balanced condition, it is a division into 2 unbalanced conditions. The play of life is to keep the 2 unbalanced conditions of effect in balance with each other. When cause and effect are in balance with each other, the spiritual and physical manifestations of either man or nature manifest harmony, unity, growth and normalcy in all parts. When such an almost impossible rarity occurs with man, one might then well say, God made man's body perfect as well as man. Until mankind unfolds to such a high cosmic goal, however, we must use every means within the power of our increasing knowledge to remedy unbalanced conditions in imperfect bodies. God's law of cause and effect always works. When anything goes wrong with you, or with civilization, it is you who are at fault, not God. If men steal from each other and kill each other for ages, they harvest hate and fear, which culminates in wars. The seed of fear, hate and greed will not yield harvests of love, prosperity, happiness and peace. Men pray to ask God to stop the wars, instead of praying to ask God to so enlighten them that men can practice the love principle in their human relations and, therefore, reap a like harvest. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 458. Anon equals law m 6 volts cln n cm eu ku mu mu ami kui cm cm ku cry cm cm me n eu cubic micrometers e mi cm 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 me cm e cm 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 m cm cm EU mu m. So long as man continues to violate God's law, he will hurt himself. All the faith and belief in the world will not alter the effect of any cause whatsoever. Try it. Try putting your finger on a red-hot stove while praying reverently, with full faith and belief that God will cancel the law as a favor to you, and see what happens. Your finger will burn. Therefore, I again say to you that when you ask God for anything, never ask Him to fulfill His part, for He has already done that. But ask Him, rather, to show you what you should do to so harmoniously work with Him that your desire will be fulfilled. Everything which is wrong with you is of your own making, therefore, ask that you be enlightened. If, for example, you want a roof for your church and your people pray in full faith and belief that God will give it to you, and you then rely solely upon your prayer, your church will not get its roof. If, however, you ask God to give you knowledge to guide your actions in giving service for giving of money for the roof, you will assuredly have your desire fulfilled, as the farmer's desire is fulfilled when he does his part by tilling the soil and planting seed. That is what I mean by the prayers of men who tell God what they wish Him to do instead of asking God to tell them what they should do. That is the great misconception of the power of prayer. The cause of that misconception lies in the fact that people who ask God for fulfillment of their desires forget that requests for material things are created only through two-way action. Material things are not created by rubbing in a Latin Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 459. Comp. Seep. Emma waste mop 0 e equals op c.m.p go omim. A mop equals mom poo.tortmo. Lamp, or through wishful thinking degrees. They are created through balanced action and reaction. When a mechanic fixes your broken car through knowledge of its workings, or a surgeon fixes your broken body through knowledge of its workings, those operations are as much mind healings as the elimination of toxic poisons from your body by thoughts of love is a mind healing degrees. All creations are mind creations degrees. All mind creations have bodies formed in the images of mind thoughts degrees. All bodies are created by action and destroyed by opposing action degrees. What man forgets when he prays, when man fervently asks God to fulfill desires, he forgets that he is asking God to do what he himself should do. God's part has already been done degrees. Man asks God to stop wars, forgetting that wars are man-made, not God-made degrees. Wars are effects of the disunity, greed and selfishness of man degrees. Man has free will to manifest the spirit in him, or his senses, as he wills degrees. It is all a part of the play of cause and effect. The play must go on until man learns by experience that he must someday manifest the love principle upon which the universe is founded degrees. Faith will not do your work. You know that the fulfillment of any desire whatsoever comes only through intelligent action degrees. You guide your car through busy universal law, natural science and philosophy page 460. Streets by intelligent action, not by faith or belief, unsupported by knowledge of the right actions which are necessary to take. Faith and belief are wonderfully consoling for a wishful thinker who is willing to believe in miraculous happenings, or who is quite ready to evade effort on his part, but it should be erased from the lexicon of those who desire to achieve, or to acquire anything degrees. God creates what he knows by thinking it into divided forms. Man should do likewise, but he must first know that which he desires to think into form. You may have faith, belief, and also hope in regard to others, but not in God. You must know that God will give you your desire. Others may have to justify your faith and belief in them, but God should not have to prove himself to you. If you ask a builder to build a house for you, you know that he can do it, and also he knows that he can do it. If he answered your inquiry as to whether he could build a house for you by say, "Can't King, I hope I have faith and belief that I can," your own faith in him would be tinged with deep doubts. For your very belief in him is founded on confidence in his knowledge. You must have confidence in yourself based upon your null-registered edge, for knowledge is your power, not faith or belief. Therefore, I say to you, whenever you desire to do anything for which you do not feel yourself equipped, do not start doing it with doubt in your mind, or with blind faith that God will do it for you. For you must not start that way. Stop, rather, and talk with God. See him, know him, be him. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 461. In deep meditation degrees seek knowledge through inspiration. That is the only way to build omnipotence into your desire degrees. That is the only way to start with strength to fulfill your desire. Never start anything without inspired knowledge which puts love into your givings, for that which is called work should be only joyous givings. Your weakness lies in asking God to fulfill your desire instead of asking him to give you the knowledge to work with him in the fulfilling of a universal desire. You render yourself weak in so asking, and you dub your weakness by the very thought of having faith in God. Having faith in God implies a doubt of the certainty of his promise, and places God on his honor to grant you your request. That is not the right attitude. You should approach any achievement with an attitude of certainty. You should never approach God or yourself in an attitude of supplication. Degrees you are not asking benevolence, nor is God dealing out patronage. God is creator and you are co-creator, not a supplicant for favors. You must lose your idea of separateness and find your universality. Until you know your oneness with the universe, you are but one part of it. As long as you feel yourself to be a separate individual person, you will think of God as separate and apart from yourself. Until you can think of yourself as the person, or the universal self, God will be another being, whom you may reverence, or worship, or ask favors from, or depend upon, in the measure of your knowledge of God. Degrees to have faith or belief in God implies separateness. It Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 462, implies that God is another, of whom you cannot say I and my Father are one. That is why much deep meditation, or communion with God, is the most important thing in your life, for the more you lose yourself in the universal self, the more you think of God and yourself being an. When you plant corn, you do it with knowledge, born of experience, that the corn will grow and fill your granaries. It does not grow because you have faith and belief that it will grow. It grows because of the workings of God's laws. Likewise, you put the seed in the Beetulum Site 12y intelligent action. You do not sit in the house and pray to God with faith and belief that He will plant it for you, for you know that He will not. God will work with you but not for you, and all of the faith and belief in the world will not give you a crop without your doing your part with God in the fulfillment of your desire. Corn grows, forests rise in their majesty, vapors rise and storms rend without faith and belief, or even without knowledge. God's law is being fulfilled in them. God's law is also being fulfilled in you. You may break your leg and God's law will heal it, just as God's law grows the corn. But if you ask God to do more for you than fulfill His law, in other words, if you ask Him to do something for you which is your part of it, He will not do it, no matter how much you pray, and no matter how much faith and belief you put into your prayer. To exemplify my meaning, suppose your broken leg is badly twisted out of line, or the bones pass each other, and you ask God to reset the bones, which you yourself should do or have done. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 463. By a surgeon who knows, you will find that God will do His part by making His universal law work for you, but your twisted leg will be the evidence of your own neglect to do your part of the work that God is doing with you, and you will be a cripple for life. A self-made cripple, self-destined to suffer from your own disobedience to God's law. And therein lies most of the confusion regarding faith healing. God's laws of growth are absolute. They work automatically, and they work whether you pray or do not pray. Conversely, God's laws of decay and disintegration are just as absolute as His laws of construction. And all the prayers which ask God to set aside His laws as a special favor to you, are more than wasted. Let me exemplify. Potato blight develops in a farmer's field. The farmer does not go to his chamber to pray with full faith and belief that God will cure the potato blight while he sits by his fireside and does not do his part in working with God to reverse the destructive blight. Nor does he reason with God by making such useless affirmations as, God made the potato perfect. Therefore, there is no imperfection in God. The farmer knows that he must do his part in checking the destructive growth with God's help, which means with the certain knowledge that God's unalterable laws will always work, so he corrects the faulty, damp, or undernourished soil which was the cause of the blight, and God's constructive laws heal the scars and restore normalcy. If you would not expect a farmer to heal his potato blight by faith and belief in prayer to God, why expect it of humans? Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 464. Yet a blight develops in a human such as cancer, or tumor, or wasted lung, or any of the many things which can happen to any material growing body which came out of the ground through the constructive forces of nature, and must return to the ground through the destructive forces which are always waiting to do their part in nature's work the instant they are called upon to do their part. Many humans would not ask God to cure a potato blight, nor condemn a farmer for curing it himself. But when they find that a blight has struck their own body, they pray that God will set aside his inexorable laws because of their great faith in him, instead of doing what the farmer does by working with God. Those who believe this way make certain affirmations upon which they base their beliefs regarding humans as being quite different from laws governing potatoes. These believers say with much reverence, God made man perfect, therefore, there can be no imperfection degrees. If you will but see yourself perfect, you will then be perfecto. The great fallac of such a belief lies in the court that man's body is not man. Man is mind, an idea of mind, an idea with a spiritual entity degrees. That is what God made perfect, and it is quite true that there can be no imperfection in the spiritual, eternal mono, but it is not the perfect spiritual man that has a cancer, or tumor degrees. It is man's body which has the cancer or tumor. And it is man's body which is following the inexorable laws of cause and effect, which constructs and destroys all bodies sequentially. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 465. Perfection of God's law. God made his law perfect also. Perfection of God's law means perfection of balance between two opposite forces, the force which builds bodies and the force which destroys them degrees. God made both these forces, and they are inexorable and unalterable in their workings degrees. God made the divided universe, and the laws which govern it are perfecto, but God gave man knowledge of how to control those forces. 12. Putting his knowledge into action, the forces of nature, and the construction of bodies cannot be controlled to wishful thinking. The divided universe of bodies which come from the earth and echo back into the earth is one of action, not inaction and wishful thinking degrees. I cut my finger one day when my hands were soiled degrees. I knew very well that the disintegrative forces would have an excellent opportunity to manifest God's law by infecting my finger if I gave those waiting microbes a chance to return my body to the earth degrees. Destructive microbes are manifesting God's law as purposefully as sunshine and growth are fulfilling it. I stepped into the bathroom where my host was washing his face and asked for iodine and hot water, whereupon he said to me, "I am amazed that a man with your knowledge would ask for iodine. What would you have me do?" I asked. His reply was, "Why not let God do it?" "Then why do you not let God wash your face?" I asked. "That is different. I must do this for cleanliness, but you are using medicine," he countered degrees. Universal Law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 466. So are you degrees. Soap is as much a medicine as iodine is. You keep clean in order to keep your body from decaying, as it would if you did not keep it clean degrees. I am doing the same thing with a stronger microbe killer than soap is because my finger is bleeding degrees. That is the only difference, but the principle is the same. When we went into dinner, I asked of my host, "Why do you eat food if God made you perfect? And why is Janie going to the dentist today to have her teeth filled? And why did you go to the oculist to have glasses made for your body if God made you perfect?" The answer is that God did not make bodies, but God is continually making bodies and is continually destroying them with your help and the help of all nature. Your body is being made. It is not finished, and that is why you are eating food now. You are helping make your body, and if you put good food into it you will help make a good body, in accordance with the perfect law which will work with you. Conversely, if you put bad food into it, you, yourself, will poison your body. You will then find that God's perfect law will work against you. If God made you perfect and you destroy that perfection, then why pray to God to fulfill His promise to you to make you perfect? You are not fulfilling that part of the law which is yours to do. You as eternal man belong to the undivided universe of undivided balanced degrees. That is where your perfection lies, not in your body, for all bodies are imperfect to some extent. Universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy, page 467. F equals A. Q0 COOE 0.150 Miapo, equals D1 Mumma WCWOAD. Back peep. Bodies belong to the divided universe of divided balance. Your body, however, belongs to the divided universe of divided balance between two opposite forces. Each of these divided balances manifest God equally. Each are perfect exemplifications of the LDW. If you put decaying or poisonous food into your growing body and then ask God in full faith and belief to set His law aside for you, you are but expressing ignorance of God's way of working with you instead of knowledge of your co-creatorship with God. You do not realize that you are asking God to reverse His law and make the destructive force which you have put into your body become the constructive force. When God divided the undivided, He made both divisions perfecto. When you use both of them in balance, you produce a perfect body. But when you, or all nature, unbalance the two, you are violating God's law, and you must blame yourself only for it. Do not blame God or ask Him to void your mistake. You, yourself, must void it. Restoring balance. Two children on a seesaw play with the two opposite forces of the divided universe with great happiness until one or both of them break that equality. Blood then flows from shins by the children's own decisions to manifest unbalanced. Perfection is everywhere. There is no imperfection. When we see what we call imperfect bodies, or imperfection anywhere, whether it be in crippled children, malformed trees, or diseased N, or life-taking hurricanes, droughts, smallpox epidemics, or any other effect of motion whatsoever which expresses a universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 468. Very unbalanced condition. We must see them as perfect workings of a perfect law. If they are not to our liking, we must do something about it. The only thing we can do is to work with God intelligently through action, just as God works with nature through intelligent action. A smallpox epidemic cannot be stopped 12 years all the prayers of all the world so long as man continues to build smallpox into his own body through ignorance of the law which he is breaking. Instead of praying to God to stop the epidemic, man should pray for knowledge of how to work with God in the building of balanced bodies. If knowledge of the cause of smallpox is given you and you find that mosquitoes are carrying those destructive germs to you, and you then insulate yourself from the cause, the epidemic will disappear, as many epidemics have disappeared through knowledge and obedience to God's law. Victims by thousands died of smallpox when prayer alone was practiced, but deaths. When knowledge destroyed its cause. Knowledge made the bubonic plague to be a thing of the past. while ignorance of its cause would still cause countless deaths no matter how many people fervently prayed to God to stop it by affirming that God made man perfecto. Knowledge of cause saved millions of lives while millions died because of ignorance. Degrees. Likewise, hosts of reverent people pray to God to stop wars while they still continue the practices which make wars. Degrees. Love alone will stop wars by unifying mankind. Degrees. Just so long as unity causes men and nations to fear each other, there will be wars. Degrees. Universal law, natural science and philosophy, page 469. Grave inconsistencies of non-thinking people. Many who believe in healing by prayer alone without working with God through intelligent action vehemently condemn calling in a doctor or surgeon in cases where a purely mechanical action is needed to save a life, such as in childbirth where both child and mother die because of the lack of a purely mechanical change of position of the born child which otherwise could not be born. Degrees. Refusal to make use of the knowledge of one to whom God has given such knowledge is as much a commission of murder by the one who refuses as though he killed the mother and child with a revolver. I know of such a person who rejects the help of all doctors and surgeons, and bitterly condemns all operations. I asked of him this question: do you condemn the idea of a blood transfusion when a person is dying from loss of blood? Yes, I do, he replied, because it requires a surgical operation which would not be necessary if one had proper faith in God. Or if you were dying of hunger, would you not eat food to make blood so that you would not die? I asked. Of course I would, but that is God's nature I plan, while surgical operations are not. Surgery is a method employed by those who do not know, or believe in God's almighty power. He replied, would you recommend that 100 surgeons and doctors be withdrawn from the battlefield and replaced with men of your belief to save the lives of men whose legs have been shot off? Universal law, natural science and philosophy, page 2170. Al Amin 6 and 6 and Al 66. Al A. We 66 Me 6 WWW and Me Wo 6066 C. EA 6 We 66 M We A. On 66 Al A. WVA. In 66 A. In Un A. Meow A. Mgo 66. 0 NA. NGM Wo.6 M. A. W. AM. A. M. Skulls crushed and bones exposed to view. Men who are bleeding to death from terrible gunshot wounds or burns where flesh is half gone from the body? In asking you this question, may I remind you that knowledge of surgery has reduced the death percentage to 1/5 of the death rate of 30 years ago. Could your method give these men new legs, new arms, faces, and parts of bodies which plastic surgery has made possible, in giving happiness and new life to thousands who would have died in agony otherwise? His answer was so inconsistent that I will give it only in brief digest. It was to the effect that mind cure had not yet reached that stage, that the patients must also have faith that war was sin and the wages of sin are death, and other generalities which indicated gross ignorance of God's ways of working with man and nature. Such believers do not realize that when surgeons heal with knowledge, that is mind healing. It is making use of knowledge followed law action, which is the very basic principle of creation. God makes all things purposefully. Degrees. They lust fulfill their purpose, when they have fulfilled it, or have rendered their bodies incapable of fulfilling it. God's law returns the body to the stillness from which it came. Those who affirm that God made man perfect, meaning the body of man, do not realize that the making of the body of man covers a period of millions of years. The man of the jungle, or of the Stone Age, or the Neanderthal man are as unalike as the forests of today and those of the Carboniferous age are unalike. If God made man of today perfect, could we not also say the universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 471 Neanderthal man was perfect, or that cosmic illumined man of the future is also perfect when neither one resembles the other either mentally or physically? Bodies are electrochemical machines. All vegetable and animal bodies are mechanical instruments which are made for the sole purpose of manifesting God through action. That is all that bodies do. They do nothing else than express the actions of their centering mind which motivates their actions. Bodies are composed of electric waves. One half of every wave is concentrative and centripetal. It is thus polarized in the positive direction of increasing vitality. It is the builder of bodies. Positive polarity multiplies power and the measure of desire of mind to express action degrees. Positive polarity expresses love degrees. The other half of the wave is decentrative and centrifugal degrees. It is thus polarized in the negative direction of decreasing vitality degrees. It is the destroyer of bodies degrees. Negative polarity divides power and the measure of desire of mind to rest from expressing action degrees. Negative polarity expresses death degrees. One half of every wave, likewise, is alkaline in its chemistry. The alkaline elements re-positive and multiply vitality in the direction which expresses life. The other half of the wave is acid in its chemistry degrees. The acid elements are negative and divide vitality in the direction which expresses death degrees. Universal law, Natural Science and Philosophy page 472 For every acid element there is a balancing alkaline 1 degrees. Both are necessary but each must always balance the other, else the body is thrown out of balance and becomes ill, or develops the destructive growths and malignancies which are so rapidly increasing in the unnatural lives of great cities degrees. Centering the body is the undivided consciousness which rules the body through its divided extensions of thinking mind degrees. The wave vibrations of thinking mind are likewise divided into opposite sets of emotions degrees. The emotions which express happiness, joy, ecstasy, love and goodwill polarize the body positively in the direction which expresses life degrees. These emotions multiply the alkaline elements to vitalize the body and to destroy any destructive tissues or malignancies in the body caused by an overbalance of acid supremacy degrees. Poisonous toxins which are not deep-seated will thus be avoided, but long-developing, deep-seated growths, due to unbony conditions, and to inherited malformations in seed patterns may be retarded but are often not possible of healing without the aid of the surgeon degrees. The emotions which express anger, fear, worry, jealousy, cynicism and hatred polarize the body negatively in the direction which expresses death. These emotions multiply the acid elements and devitalize the body by developing toxic conditions, which if sufficiently sustained, promote the various destructive growths which gradually decay the body until it is utterly destroyed degrees. As I have so often said, we build our own bodies by the thoughts we think as well as the food we eat degrees. God's mind is universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy page 473 Forever ecstatic degrees. The more we reflect the ecstatic condition of God's mind, the more we vitalize our bodies, prolong our lives, and lengthen their maturing points. That is what I mean by the need for constant communion with God in order that His omnipotence shall be extended to you in the measure of your ability to recognize it in you degrees. That is why my own lifetime habit of working knowingly with God delayed my maturing point until far in the 60s instead of the average maturity of man in the 40s degrees. The great effort of life is to so live, mentally and physically, that you forever maintain a perfect balance between all of these pairs of opposite conditions. While affirming to your cancer patient that God made all men perfect, are you taking into consideration all of these attributes which are so far out of balance in every living body that it is almost humorous to assert, or affirm, such an impossibility in nature? The actual fact is that there are no perfect living bodies of any kind in nature. Degrees their very growth under so many varying conditions makes perfection for all of them impossible. Degrees the perfection lies in the law which makes bodies, not in the bodies. That oak over in the open meadow seems perfect, a squirrel planted it on good ground. Degrees that other oak over in the shadow seems far from perfect, a squirrel planted it on barren ground in the crevice of rocks where its roots could not spread. Degrees that man over there seems to have a fine body, even though one would not call it perfect. He has injured its shape by universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 474. Overeating. Next to him is a much finer body. Degrees he inherited it from long-lived ancestors. But over to the left is a misshapen body given to him by parents who were syphilitic. Degrees in the hospital up the street are rooms full of bodies with twisted feet, hunched backs and other deformities. Degrees surgery is reclaiming many of these to a semblance of perfection. Degrees could you bring happiness or cure to any of these by telling them that God made them perfect? I think not. I know a man like these, however, that would believe you and understand you when you say God made man perfect. This man is a hopeless cripple, a paralytic who has not moved in 30 years. Degrees he is totally blind also, but can he, and talk? That is all he can do physically. Degrees yet spiritually he is a giant. Degrees he would say, yes, God made me perfect, but nature, or my parents, or something did not work in balance with God's law to give me a perfect body. He is one of the most joyous and spiritual men I have ever known, and has brought health and happiness to others by his inspired writings, by means of which he has made himself abundantly self-supporting. You will remember the passage of Scripture which says that the unbalanced acts of parents will be visited upon their children unto the third and fourth generation. There are millions of imperfect bodies, even badly malformed bodies, which are the inherited malformations of distorted seed patterns. Degrees our blind paralytic is undoubtedly one of these. Disease is not alone the cause of all of these formations of descendants. Degrees for several generations women distorted their universal law. Natural Science and Philosophy, page 475. Inner organs by tight lacing of that barbarous invention, the corset. Hundreds of thousands of women descendants of these tight lacing ancestors have suffered great and unnecessary agony in giving birth to children, or in their normal menstrual periods, because of these sins of their mothers and grandmothers, while thousands of them have had to undergo major operations because of those sins. When you tell these women that God made them perfect and all they have to do is to see themselves perfect and remind God that He has, perhaps, overlooked them in letting something so hurtful happen to their bodies, you are forgetting that God did not do the tight lacing which caused these agonies. Their grandmothers did that. The value of faith and belief. It must be remembered that bodies are the product of thought of mind. Mind is perfect, so that part of the building of man which God does is perfect. When man's thinking is unbalanced, his body is also unbalanced, because his body is built in the image of his thinking. No one should ask God to remedy man's own failure to do his part in working with God. All the faith and belief in the world will not induce God to balance man's own unbalancing, for that would take free will from man and reduce him to the status of an automaton. and that is not in the scheme of nature. Faith and belief have great emotional value in healing bodies, for, like other positive spiritual emotions such as reverence, ecstasy, happiness, beauty, love and kindred emotions, they universal law, natural science and philosophy page 476 reverse the opposite emotions of fear, hate, worry, discouragement and other negative emotions, and thus repolarize a depolarizing body degrees. When you have thus substituted such constructive emotions for destructive ones, it is not your faith and belief in God which has healed, it is you, yourself, who have healed yourself by balancing your body electrically and chemically. Obedience to God's law that has healed you degrees. Conclusion. Foundation of love is balance. God's universe is balanced by the two opposite pulsations which manifest love degrees. When man learns to balance all his human relations, and all of his human emotions, he will have a perfectly balanced body. Normal bodies are balanced. Everyone must have as balanced and as normal a body as he is able to practice the principles of balance from moment to moment of his life degrees. If you could keep in balance all that God has already given you, you would never have any illness of body whatsoever, for it would be impossible degrees. God's balanced laws are always fulfilled with balanced manifestations. It could not be otherwise. Conversely, unbalance between the two opposing forces will always result in unbalanced manifestations degrees. Tumors, cancers, headaches, heart disease, and every other body ailment is the result of unequal interchange between God's two constructive-destructive forces. Likewise, all infectious diseases and all malignancies are similarly caused, for absolute universal laws. Natural Science and Philosophy page 477 balance between the two would insulate each from the other and allow the complete cycle of appearance and disappearance to consummate themselves in an orderly and normal manner degrees. The more you can live and work knowingly with God from moment to moment, the more your bogey can approach the perfection which complete balance can alone. 0.2f.2 Swannanoa, Waynesboro, Virginia. Treasured friends, we feel that by this time you will have discovered that there is a trend, and a purpose, between the lines of these lessons other than the building of knowledge upon which a scientifically provable philosophy of life can be founded. You must feel that trend and purpose, for your letters indicate that fact, and those letters put recognition of our purpose into words more and more vividly, and it pleases Lao and me mightily. Perhaps, though, you might search harder for what is invisibly written between the lines if I put it into words and tell you very plainly what I am aiming at, psychologically. Such words would have been wasted if I stated them several months ago, but not now. For these words will have a different meaning today than they would have during the earlier lessons. We spoke in generalities at that time, telling you, for example, that it was a transition from sensing to knowing, or the unfolding of the cosmic man, and such generalities degrees. These terms must have intuitively conveyed our meaning to you and awakened anew the desire for cosmic knowledge, but you did not have so dynamic an understanding of what lay behind those terms as you do today. You must now understand by this time that we are trying to make you live and work knowingly in both the undivided invisible universe and the divided physical universe of bodies and action. The transition from sensing to knowing actually means living in the light of inspired knowing all of the time, and extending your inspired knowing to your thoughts when you wish to create thought bodies to image your thoughts. 478 thus living in the high heavens, the body is but secondary, and to be forgotten as much as possible when not needed for the manifestation of your knowing. Through action degrees. This reverses the rule of both body and mind by the senses, which make continual demands for pure gratification of senses. The senses are important, vitally important, for they are a doorway to the soul. If the door to the soul is kept wide open by desire of the soul in you degrees, but when demands of the senses close the door, or never let it open, and the senses dominate you, you then but live in an objective universe of sensed bodies which insulate the soul and drown out the inner voice which would reach the soul if it could. Degrees. The most wonderful thing in all the world is within every man. The genius knows it, for he is close to it. The mystic knows it better, for he has touched the hem of it, and the cosmic thinker is reaching out eagerly for that kingdom of heaven in the light which that wonderful thing is. All mankind has known of it in his heart from the beginning, and started his search for it way back in the dark eons, but many are now opening the door wider and wider, which leads to a new dwelling place, the real dwelling place of man, who has for such long ages thought that his body was his dwelling place. Degrees. To live knowingly in the light where man is, where God is, where all knowledge, power and presence are the fulcrum for expression in the divided universe. To make that kingdom of heaven which lies beyond the doors of your senses your dwelling place. To know the ecstasy of it, the inspiration of it for your interpretations into silent rhythms, into motionless forms, unborn as yet unborn till you want them born. That is what I mean by making the transition from sensing to knowing. Degrees. I want you to live in God's universe and look out from its light into its divided extensions when you will, and thus looking out I find them wonderful and good, from reflecting the glory of the light of their source strongly here, weakly there, but all of it being good, for all are seeking that door which you have found, and some are near enough for you to reach forth your hand and help them over the threshold. And just that is what Lao and I are giving our lives for, both working together toward just that end. Hours upon hours we review all these lessons together with just that end, that the right words will be found, the simplest of language and examples used, all of it for just that one purpose of keeping that door to the light wide open to you for your dwelling place, from where you may work knowingly with God from moment to moment, and be ever watchful for those who are reaching out to you to help them across the illumined threshold into the glory of the all-knowing light. For that purpose God led us to this sacred mountain, from where the message will spread throughout the world when there are teachers enough to multiply our ability to spread it. They are coming and will continue to come until the time comes when Lao and I shall unfold our plan to you for the great transformation of man, and the dawn of a new day in human relations. With our deepest love to you, I am sincerely yours, Walter Russell, SC. D. 48.